Hi and welcome to this video in the QPSMR Companion CATI Up and Running series. And in this video we're going to be looking at the tools that supervisors have to monitor projects that they're working on. Now this video doesn't cover things that are covered in other videos, which are sampling, quota management and deploying a survey so that interviewers can actually work on the survey and start collecting data from respondents. This video really focuses on a project that's in progress and looking at doing analysis on what's going on in your project once it's started. So let's get into the CATI menu. We've got a questionnaire here that we've used in other videos, which has a number of questions here for callbacks, as you can see, and as we scroll down we come to information that's coming off the sample data. And further down we get into the actual body of the questionnaire itself, which runs down from question 1 down to question 13, and then there's some outcomes at the end depending on the success or failure of the interview. So we're going to look at, first of all, working down this menu here, look at the quota file and see how the project is progressing. So we have a number of interviewers perhaps working live now, and we can see how our project is progressing. So let's open that quota file. And we can see that the quotas that we set earlier were 50 members and 20 non-members, 35 who attended the event and 35 who didn't. So we were looking for 70 respondents, and with quotas are set from 2 independent questions. It could be set from interlocking cells, but this particular project has 2 independent questions. And you can see here that what we've got is that we've got none of the 50 members that we want, but we have got 1 non-member who's saved, and that non-member also attended the event. So it's obviously very early stages of the project, but we can view this file at any time and we can react to it, and we can react to it in different ways. We can edit the file going into the, if we close this off, you can see under CATI, edit the quota file. I could change the quota, so I might reduce my number of members down if I thought we were going to struggle to meet that quota. Or of course we can just react to it. We could tell our interviewers to prioritize particular types of respondents to perhaps boost that quota so that it catches up, if you like, with the other quotas in our particular survey. Of course, this is very early days here. We've only got 1 respondent record collected so far, so that really isn't appropriate. But this is a tool for looking at the progress of our project. We can see how many are saved, how many we still need, so we still need 34 now, and if there's some in progress we could actually see what's in progress at a particular time as well. So that's a very useful tool for a supervisor to see how a project is progressing. We can go a little bit deeper into that. We can look at a latest status report, open up our project, and we actually get a report in Excel which we can share with colleagues or management. So now if we just widen these columns a little bit so we can see what they all say, you can see now that we have 30 records in our sample file. 27 of them haven't been looked at all, and then of the 3 that do have a status, 1 we've completed, 1 was ineligible, and 1 set an appointment to finish at a later date. So you can see the progress of your sample file here. You can see that of the 30 that are sitting there at the moment, 27 are still inactive or not been accessed at all, but 3 have, and they've had different outcomes. And we can see that broken down by the different quota points that we have here so that we get a full analysis. And then that's something that we can share with colleagues. Perhaps the person who's in charge of the project might be the researcher, and they can then, if they want to, load up more. You can load up more sample here so that you can know that you can meet your targets based on the information you have available at the moment. Now again, of course, this is only an example. We've only got 30 records here, but it gives you an idea of what you can work towards. So that's the progress of our sample. So that's a really useful report that you may want to look at or share with colleagues. So we can now work down to the next part of the list here. So we can look at the appointment list. Again, I can open up the QIF file, and again it helps here to slightly widen these columns a little bit. So if we just widen them here, you can see now that the only appointment I got is record number 21, and after they'd got 52% of the way through the questionnaire, they decided they want to set an appointment for a future date and at a particular time, and the priority we set from that was low. There were no comments left. We could have left comments, but we can see they fit into this cell in the, or these cells in the quota ring, so they're a member that did not attend the event, and so we can get a report. Now, if there are obviously more appointments set, we could set these and increase these, and we could obviously then prioritise our interviewers accordingly if we wanted to, particularly when those appointments were due to come up. All right, let's go back to the CATI menu again, and we can now see, if we wish to, a list of all the serial numbers. So I'm going to get a full list here, open up the file again, and again now I can see for all of the records in my sample file what their outcome is. So down here I can see there's the 30 records that have been loaded to the sample file, and in here I can see their status. So if I just widen that column temporarily, I can see that they were contacted successfully, they were not eligible, and so on, how many times we tried them, their profile in the sample file here, and then details of their contacts, who contacted them, the date they contacted them, what time, and whether the interview proceeded, and then the outcome of how far that got. So if we scroll across over here to the right, we can see any other outcomes from any callbacks, but of course no one's been called back at this stage, so they're all empty. But this is again a good detailed report to know about how your sample's doing, and what status they're at exactly, and who's making contact, and making sure that perhaps each of your interviewers are making a successful contact. So that's quite good at getting into the detail. Now, when your project's progressed much further, say you are collecting, let's say, 1,000 respondents on a telephone survey, maybe after you've collected 500, you want to do some analytics to see how your team is doing. So we again can go into the analysis now, and we can start to analyse the data that we have available. So we can use the data drill down facilities here. And so if I come past that, I can open my data file. So I can open my main data file, and you can see I've got 2 records in here at the moment, and I can start to analyze that data. So I could look at, for example, the total input time. Now, all these ZZ entries here are collecting information about your survey, the start time, the finish time, who completed it, but they're also collecting interesting information about the number of keystrokes that are input, the number of seconds the survey is taken. So I can just drop this information into here, and you can see now that I've got 2 records. One took 20 seconds to complete, and one took 241 seconds to complete. Now, if I analyse that by the outcome, so I could analyse that by any of the data in my survey if it's important, but I'm going to pick a ZZZ entry here, drop that into the columns, and you can see that my successful interview took 241 seconds, and my unsuccessful, not eligible one dropped out within 20 seconds. So you can see that was fairly quick, and that's why that figure was a lot lower than the other one that was the full interview. And of course I can analyse all my data in greater depth here. Once I've got perhaps 100 respondents, I can start to see what's going on. I can look at the number of key depressions, for example. So if we go back up the list here, you can see there's a number of keystrokes. I could drop that into the report, and you can see the one that was in only had 9 key depressions, whereas this one had 47. And I could obviously do some analysis then by the user name. I could look at to see how each of my operators are performing, how quickly they perhaps are completing successful interviews. I can really get into some quite depth analysis here. and see whether the project is progressing satisfactorily. Another field that I like to use on bigger projects is that you have this option here, ZZSEC. Now if I drag it over here, it's going to tell me that it's missing for the non-eligible one because they never actually started the interview, but there was 86 seconds elapsed between the beginning of the interview and getting to this point here. Now what you can do with the ZZSEC entries is you can have as many of these as you like. So we could have a ZZSEC02 further down the interview, a ZZSEC03 at another point in the interview, and as many as we like, well, up to 99 of them anyway. And this allows you to time sections of your questionnaire. Now this is particularly useful in perhaps two scenarios. You might want to time how long a difficult section of the questionnaire is taking. You might want to analyse that by a particular by the interviewers so that you can see whether different interviewers are completing it at different speeds. But you can also then time whether people are going through sections. So if there are sections of your questionnaire that are highly filtered, you might find that people are getting stuck or slow if they're going through one particular section of your questionnaire. And in some cases, you may be charging your client depending on which sections of the questionnaire they go through and how long the interview is. So that might be very valuable data to it. So the ZZSEC settings that you have, or the different ZZSEC entries, I should say, that you have present in your survey, enable you to time different sections. Each ZZSEC gets counted as a different block, and you can time each of those sections, and you can see how much time is being spent on different sections of the interview. And that can be useful after maybe 100 respondents to estimate the time that your staff are going to take to collect this data. You might find that one section is particularly slow, but if only 10% of respondents are going through that, you've got to account for that time. But if it's 90%, that's going to be quite an overhead on the total time your interviewers are going to be taking. And you can then use that to estimate the number of hours that your staff are going to be working on a particular project. So that's using the data drill down facility. Now, you can go one step further than this, and it's something that I would recommend again. When it comes to analysis, you can actually set up tables that do the same things as those drill down, but then of course you can use those tables for project to project. So I'm not going to spend too long on this, but if I want to do interview progress, I could open up a QTF here and I could make a table and I could drag into that here the row ZZ input seconds. I can go back and produce this. So I'm just replicating what I did in data drill down now. But as I build this volume of tables that perhaps checks the length of interviews, the productivity of interviews, the success of the questionnaire, even perhaps looking at whether they fall into quotas and things like that, real detailed stuff. By doing that, by building up a battery of questions here, which I can now run, and of course they'll produce the same results as my survey. Let's just add the data file now and run that. And you can see now I'm getting a table out. Now this could be a whole series of tables. I'm getting the same details out now that I'm getting an average length of interview for different types. This is something that you can share, but actually more importantly, you can make this standard analysis that you produce for every project. So if having a distribution of the number of seconds a survey takes, analysed by the questionnaire outcome or the status, the outcome of the survey, you can have these set of 10, 20 tables that you might want, looking at productivity of your interviewers and different diagnostics that are available automatically on every survey, and just load these tables in. So that's another tip, that really, rather than doing this in data drill down, you can just make a set of tables that are instantly there that you can run, and you can rerun these as more data is collected. So later in the day-to-day, I could just rerun those tables that are preset and set up. I could get 10 tables of information. I could run those each day, those summary tables, and have them available to perhaps pass to management or whatever else it might be to look at progress in each project. So there's some tips on looking after the supervisor function after data collection has started. I hope you found this video useful. If you need to find out more information about the tasks before a survey is launched, such as setting up sample, quota and deploying the survey or putting together the actual questionnaire itself, there's other videos in our QPSMR Companion CATI up and running series, so I would suggest you watch those. Thank you for joining me.